Chris, I don't know what I'm getting myself into at all. I just know that I showed up and then there's this Tesla Model 3 that I'm supposed to be driving in like a couple minutes.
Well, I'll tell you, the good news is they're pretty easy to drive. You know, it's one of those cars that you can drive on the street, drive on the track, and it does both really well. And, you know, I think it's just a great platform to kind of do this dual purpose. And, you know, out of the box, they're not great on the track. The dampers are, you know, a little underwhelming. There's not a lot of camber and there's not a lot of adjustment. So what we can do to them now, though, is get a bunch of suspension arms in there, get them to turn, you know, upgrade the brakes, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, so first of all, what is this thing? I mean, there's a bunch of Tesla Model 3s, and Model 3s and Model S's, they're not strangers to grid life. You know, they've been running at grid life for a couple years now.
That's correct, yeah.
But what makes this different?
So basically with the Model 3 Challenge, what we've done is we've changed the power so that it's, you know, about 30% less than you get, you know, at full power. But the big benefit of that is that the power is consistent. So out of the box, you usually get like 1 or 2 fast laps, and then the power just kind of linearly drops off until you hit like a bottom and it's got like half. So what we've done is we've cut it down a little bit, but now you can run 12, 15 minutes straight with a, you know, linear power.
And that's due to heat, or what does that do to?
Yeah, it's primarily heat. So the cells start to overheat. All of like the internal bus bars that basically transfer the energy start to overheat, and so it just starts to drop the power. And the voltage, you know, as it comes down as well, it just can't deliver that maximum power.
And then this is interesting in that there's so many different ones, and I'm assuming that they have different mods too. I see some of them have wings, some of them don't.
Yep.
But you're able to equal them out just with software.
Yes. Yeah, so the cool part about it is, like, you think of an internal combustion engine, right? And if you want to have it tuned for a power level, you know, that's a lot of work. And, you know, you can have maybe a few different tunes in your ECU, but, you know, it's pretty limiting as to, like, if you want to pick an exact number. And with these, we can literally say, I want 223, and it'll do 223. So we can easily adjust it on the fly to whatever power level we want, and it allows us to really equal them out. They're all pretty similarly set up, but as you noticed, you know, a couple of them got some arrows, so we've made some adjustments for that. But they're all on, you know, relatively similar tires and suspension. So there's kind of like a minimum mod list, although it's not very extensive. It's pretty much just pads, fluid, and this box that we use to change the power levels. So, you know, you don't have to go nuts either if you want to come out and have fun. You know, you might not be the fastest car, but you can still be competitive.
So coilovers changed?
Yep, it's got coilovers. I think every car here has on the MPP Sports coilovers, and a lot of the arms have been changed out for like spherical bushings.
Stop Tech brakes?
Yep, Stop Tech big brake kit on the front, and
Wheels.
Those are the new MPP wheels made by Braid.
And tires?
Yep, RE71 RS.
And then seat?
Yes, so this is actually a recent product that MPP came out with, but it retains all the stock functionality. So you still have easy entry, you can still use the stock seat switches. So it's pretty nice, the integration. There's no alerts on the dash, and all the firmware works perfectly.
So pretty much what you've done to the cars now, it doesn't piss it off at all?
No, Sasha often has a baby seat in the back of his, and he daily drives it. So, you know, the nice part is, like, it's not like a normal race car where it becomes super loud and, like, you know, just very untame on the street, and, you know, you don't want to, like, drive it to work or school or the track, or, you know, is really the only place that it spends a lot of time. So the nice part about these is they're very civil. So you can modify them heavily and still drive them on the street comfortably.
Yeah, and for those of you guys wondering who Sasha is the one who built this crazy 350Z that we actually featured last year at Grid Life Circuit Legends Lime Rock. Probably the craziest 350Z in existence with the cure system and all that stuff. So in terms of like somebody from a true motorsport tuning background, he likes this stuff as well as this stuff, you know? And I think that's pretty cool. And another thing that I want to talk about, well, actually, we don't have much time, so maybe it's a good idea to go over all the stuff on this. What do I need to know about this? And how does the race actually work?
Okay, so basically what you need to know about this is when you get in the car, you're going to change your driving setting to creep, and that will basically enable that power limiting box. And then you're going to put it in track mode, which pretty much alters like the stability control, the regenerative braking, and makes the car just, work on the track. So that's pretty much all you need to know about getting it in and driving it. You just hit the brake pedal, it turns on, you slap it in gear, and you're good to go. So it's very easy to, get familiar with. And then as far as the Model 3 Challenge format, what we wanted to make sure of is that people could take a street car, drive on the track competitively, and drive it home. And so normally, in a racing series, you have to have a cage, the car has to be trailered there. There's just a lot of extra stuff that needs to happen. So this is sort of like a hybrid, I'd say between like HPDE, time attack with like a little bit of wheel-to-wheel flair. And so the way it works pretty much is we have a detection zone right before the downhill at the last corner of the track. And if two cars enter that zone, if any part of the car is within that zone, the lead car coming down the front straight needs to give the pass to the following car. So they'll basically get a blue flag from the flagging station at start finish, and they're obligated to give that point by. So they're not going to give up the racing line, but they'll back off the throttle, let the other competitor make the pass. And it sort of turns into like a game of cat and mouse where you have these cars kind of going back and forth. And our two cars in qualifying yesterday were actually within less than 1/10 of a second of each other. So I expect there's going to be a lot of this, back and forth action going on. And it should make it really exciting for the drivers and fun to watch.
Interesting. Okay. So then, what do I need to know about actually driving this? Because I've never driven a high-performance electric vehicle on track at the limit. I wouldn't even know, I don't really understand it looking at it from the outside because of the fact that there's no gears.
Yeah.
And I guess you just kind of have to have a sense of speed when you're going into a corner.
It's one of those things, when you're actually in the car driving it, it's a lot more visceral than you think, right? You get a lot of feedback. You really hear the wind in your ears. The tires give a ton of feedback. So normally you don't hear the tires, right? You got all this engine and exhaust noise. But this way, you can really focus on what the tires are telling you. So you can find the limit and you know where it is. And I think that's one of the key things is it's actually easier to find speed in this car than most cars because you're just constantly hearing each individual tire.
Interesting. Okay. So it is all-wheel drive.
It is all-wheel drive. So it's actually pretty easy to drive. You kind of just launch out of corners. The front motor really pulls the car, so you don't get a whole lot of oversteer. You can if you want, but
Right.
To go fast, probably not the best way.
But these are tuned to be what, 50-50 or?
It's actually more rear biased. So It's about a 70-30 split, but the weight distribution is about 50-50. So the chassis is actually, it's a great, take out the EV aspect. It's an awesome platform. It's got a double wishbone front, multi-link suspension rear. If you were to just put a V8 in it, you'd go, wow, this is a really well-balanced chassis.
Yeah. So then how much power did you actually tune these for?
These are basically being brought down to about 295 horsepower.
That's still a lot.
Yeah, it's not an insignificant amount. The power to weight's about 13 and a half. And yesterday they were running just over a minute for lap times here, so.
Okay.
Not too bad.
So 8:49, I should probably get in, huh?
You got it, man.
All right, cool.
Have fun.
Okay.
So here's what we're gonna do. Once you're all strapped in, you're just gonna press this little button on the bottom left here. Go to pedals and steering.
Yep.
And when we put it in creep mode, that's basically gonna activate all the cooling systems. You can actually hear the pumps running right now.
Got it.
And it's also gonna limit the power. So if you just tap the brake pedal right now, the Motec should turn on. And you can actually see that it's now limited to about 220 kilowatts.
Oh. And then, so now I can actually move the seat back a little bit?
Yep. Factory controls, makes it easy.
That's so cool. Okay. That's it? Do I need to put it in sport mode or something?
Yeah, we just hit track mode. And you can see your previous lap times.
Party time.
Tire pressures, G-forces, temperatures, the track. And yeah, it'll show your lap times as you go.
This is so cool. Okay, I'm gonna drive this. I'm gonna try to do my best. I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna do it safely within my limits. And then we'll talk more after this because there's a lot of things I need to talk about with you.
You guys ready to party?
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's time to get up there.
All right. Okay. right, Chris, I just jumped out of the car and I have a bunch of comments.
Okay.
So, first of all, this was my first time like actually trying to go fast on this track. The only other time that I've driven this track is in my Supra chasing drift cars.
Yep.
So I had to figure out the racing line, which was not too hard because I was following some of the other guys out there. But driving this car, I've never driven an electric car fast like this, and it was just such a weird feeling. It just, the reference points are just different. You know, there's no
gear
I'm
shift.
like in third gear, and I know this is a third gear corner.
Yeah.
Or fourth gear corner, or whatever. I just kind of tried to guess, I guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did my best.
Well, you got a few passes in, right?
Yeah, I passed two people, and as I was rounding the corner, like around the last lap, I started seeing the third person.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because, I don't know, it's a different kind of racing, and it was actually a lot of fun. And
Awesome.
I realized that this car is very not taxing on you as a driver.
Yes.
Like, if this was an endurance car, I feel like I could have done an hour stint in it, you know, because it's actually pretty easy to find the limit, and it's pretty easy to just keep your concentration.
Mm-hmm.
You're not like
Yeah, it's not
sweating.
100 other things going on,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of that, but it's also different. As I was driving also, I found that I could get on the throttle earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier.
There's a lot of grip, but yeah, you gotta like work up to it. But once you know it's there, you know, it's easy to kind of keep hitting that point.
Yeah. So then a couple of questions. Some of these, like the one I was driving is all-wheel drive, and some of these are actually rear-wheel drive.
Yes.
How do you guys balance the performance?
So pretty much the limit that we've set is under the peak power of all of the cars, even the rear-wheel drive. So a stock rear-wheel drive will do about 350 horsepower. So we got it down to 295. So, you know, we're actually running slightly under like their peak. So that's kind of how we're able to balance it now. They're a little bit lighter. They're about 200 pounds lighter, so the rear-wheel drive is about 3,800, and the all-wheel drive is about just over 4,000. So there's a little bit of a difference there, but the all-wheel drives do actually generally have a little bit higher cornering speeds. So it kind of all evens out pretty well. Jesse was driving his rear-wheel drive. He actually ended up in third. So, you know, the parity is not bad.
Right. Because if you were a good driver, you knew the line, you knew your braking points and where to get back on the gas, all that. Gas. I keep saying gas. It's throttle.
Accelerator,
it's not gas.
throttle,
Accelerator. Yeah. You potentially could be faster in the rear-wheel drive than the all-wheel drive.
Yeah, I would say so, at least for a few laps. So the one weakness with the rear-wheel drive is that it only has one motor to put current into. So as the voltage from the battery starts to drop down, the power will eventually start to kind of taper. So we don't really see that until maybe the last couple laps of the race. But if you were gonna build a car for the series, I'd probably use an all-wheel drive. Now you don't need to use a performance either. You can use just the normal dual motor all-wheel drive configuration. So on top of that cooling box, there's also what we call a party box. And that will basically, you know, mimic the sort of track mode, traction control, stability control systems. And Sasha's actually spent a lot of time tweaking that. It's faster even than track mode. So it lets you get a little more wild.
But how is it that the Tesla system itself lets you mess with it like that? I mean, it's like putting a ECU or cracking the ECU on a internal combustion car.
Yeah, it's very similar idea. So Sasha is the brains behind all that. I don't know. I just like to use it. But you know, basically, you know, Tesla's pretty good about like as long as you're not doing, I think, anything that would be unsafe or, you know, messing with the power, like increasing the power or doing something that like could result in, you know, a thermal event. I think they're okay with it. You know, it's when you start trying to do stuff like that I think there would be maybe a little leery. But
right, you guys are doing the opposite. You guys aren't increasing power, you're decreasing power.
Yeah,
but
so that should be no problem.
It makes it fun because you're trying to even out all these different vehicles, some with different mods, probably some with different tires too, huh?
Yes.
And you're trying to get them to run together on the track at the same time.
Yep.
So one thing that I didn't talk about is that we ran before the track was even technically hot, right? And then you guys also run after the sound ordinance
Yes.
kicks in.
Yep.
Because these don't actually make any sound.
It's really just tire noise. So Lime Rock Park's the perfect example, right? The neighbors, generally speaking, don't like the track. They don't like the noise, they don't want to hear it. You can't run on Sundays, you can't run in the morning, you can't run at night, and there's only a few unmuffled days a year. So that's kind of another benefit that I don't think is talked about often is, you know, you could run these on a Sunday and no one would know.
Yeah.
And so I think that the opportunity for a track like Lime Rock is that potentially, eventually, you open up Sundays to as like an EV day, right?
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, it's good for motorsports, and it's not. I think it's important to say, like, the idea is not to replace internal combustion engine. We all here came from a nice, you know, background.
Right.
It's just that we like these too. So it's an addition. It's to bring new people on who otherwise might not want to do, you know, any tracking. And the maintenance costs are super cheap. The cost to run at a track is really low. It's really just pads and tires. They don't break. I put 3,000 track miles on Model 3s. I've never had a single thing fail. Not a motor, not a battery, nothing. They just work. And, you know, I own an E46 M3. I still have it, actually. And, you know, it's a great car. I love driving it, but it breaks constantly. There's always something that has to be fixed. So I think that's, you know, a perk that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of that just makes it compelling.
But yeah, it is pretty cool. And, you know, potentially, who knows, in the future, there could be tracks that are closer and closer to cities. And, you know, they could be running all day.
And not have to worry about
not have
sound.
to worry about it. But also another thing is, you would have to do it where you're not losing traction. If you're breaking traction, if you're drifting, it's actually still very loud because the tire noise is insane.
That's true. They will drift pretty well, actually, if you set it up for it. But we have not really explored that too much. But yeah, they'll let you get sideways pretty good.
Yeah, and I noticed that, you know, if I was coming in too hot or if I mid-corner I was just too greedy, it would understeer a little bit, or if the rear end would kick out. It was actually very easy to correct for that.
Yes, just kind of get on the throttle and it sucks itself straight.
I just can't believe how easy these things are to drive.
Yeah, it's the perfect car to learn on. I mean, you know, people always say drive a Miata, right? I mean, especially with these power limited, it's kind of a similar feeling. Like, they're really easy to drive. It's easy to focus on the line and your braking points and, you know, become a better driver and not worry about all the other stuff and, you know, not be in this car that has so much power that, you know, you make a mistake and you just hit the throttle and you compensate for it. So it's a great, like, learning or beginner platform, I think.
You know what I was really surprised about? The fact that I could floor it over the shelf.
Yeah.
I mean, is it because it's all-wheel drive and you can't do that with the rear-wheel drive ones, or?
Even the rear-wheel drives, you can pretty much floor it over. The ABS, you know, traction control system is all Bosch, but then Tesla modifies it basically for what they need. And the advantage to like a electric motor over an internal combustion engine is that it can react instantly, right? So if it needs to, you know, cut power or apply power or grab a brake or something, like, all these things are happening like this, whereas, you know, with an internal combustion engine, you have all this mechanical rotation occurring. So you just can't make those minute, you know, really fast adjustments. So yeah, you can pretty much just go flat over the hill and you'll get air, but it just doesn't care.
So traction control was on then?
Yes, it's limited, so it lets you get, you know, play around a lot, but it is still there. So it'll basically, in most cases, save you if you need saving.
Right.
But I mean, don't get me wrong, we had a guy earlier spin out, so it's not like you can't overdrive the car.
Yeah, because in the stock Supra, in fourth gear and even in fifth gear, if I go over that hill with too much throttle, man, that thing will spin up all the way to red line.
Yeah.
And
This
when
will
I
just cut the
land,
power.
it is not a fun time. It is accidental drift, you know?
No, I've driven my M3 here, so I know what you mean.
But I mean, there's a charm to that. I guess that's the fun part of driving a high-speed rear-wheel drive car.
Yeah. And again, that's the thing is, like, I want to be clear, like, we don't not like ice. Like, we're all for racing, and, you know, that's why we're out here. But we want to show people you can do it in these too.
In fact, you guys probably have one of the craziest internal combustion engine race cars here at
Yes.
Lime Rock this weekend.
That's probably true. So it's basically like they're almost polar opposites.
Yeah.
Although Sasha's taken actually like the front big brake kit on his car is the same one on my car. So he's using like a lot of parts, that can kind of cross over. And if you look on his car, you'll maybe see some of the control arms that look very similar to the ones on these cars. So he takes what he learns on each platform and applies it to the other. And I think that's what's really cool is it's kind of making everything work as well as possible together as like a complete package. And that's true of any car, right? It's not just about slapping parts on it, it's about making them all work cohesively. And that's where I think Sasha's like engineering prowess really shines, is he can make a car go fast really well.
Well, it's super cool. It's a lot of fun. And I almost just felt like I wanted more laps,
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you guys do? Like, do you have to take them individually to the charger here?
So there's 6 level 2 chargers up at the hill, so you could use those. Or there's a supercharger about 12 minutes away in North Cannon, and that'll charge the car really fast. So, the difference with those is you need about 4 or 5 hours to recover the energy, whereas on a supercharger, you really only need like 45 minutes.
So then what do? Do you take these one at a time?
Yeah, basically the owners just hop in the cars. They either drop them off at the hill or they run to the supercharger, maybe grab some lunch, go to the bathroom, whatever, come back. So, there's definitely like an added level of thought that has to go into planning it. You can't just dump fuel into it. So, it's still, I think, in its infancy though. I mean, if you look back where we were even 5 years ago, the Model S at the time was pretty much, it was useless on the track. Everything overheated, it was no fun. The Model 3 came out, and it was a giant leap in technology. And obviously, as you can see, like they became really viable on the track. Well, when they refreshed the S and came out with the Palladium, which is, what everybody sees as the Plaid, so we got a Plaid all the way down at the end there. And, that took a lot of the technology and what they learned with the 3 and made it even better. And, that car, I think here can probably do about a 54 or 55, if he can get a clean lap in. So far, that has not happened. There's been black flags everywhere. But I think, it's definitely capable. And a car with 1,000 horsepower, you basically take one of these, you triple the power, and, you add about 600 pounds, 700 pounds of weight. But you can imagine coming down this front straight, I think he hit 160. So it's not a slow car by any means. So when they take that technology that they developed for the Plaid, and they put it into a smaller chassis like the 3, at a more affordable price point, I mean, it's only going to continue to get better. The charging's going to get faster. Like, the experience will continue to improve.
Pretty soon, they'll actually have superchargers, I'm assuming, at racetracks.
There's actually 3 in California with superchargers on the track, and we've got 1 Atlanta Motorsports Park in Georgia, and they've got fast chargers on site. So
which
it's
3?
happening.
Which 3 in California?
It's Buttonwillow, Laguna, and Thunderhill. And we're running at Laguna, so it makes it so easy. You just go do your laps, come off, plug in, you don't have to think about it. It's awesome.
It's interesting that it's enough Teslas that are running at those tracks that warrants them actually installing one. And then how many stations is it?
I believe it's between 8 and 12, depending on the track. So there's a pretty decent amount. And, again, like, you really only need to charge for a half hour, 45 minutes. So if you got 2 hours between sessions, you need like 40 cars for it to become an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, in California, obviously that's Tesla's kind of hometown. There are tons of cars out there. And there's a pretty good community of people who go to the track with their cars. The East Coast is still kind of up and coming, but I think that 5 years from now, you'll see a lot more.
Thank you so much. Thanks for letting me drive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to support us directly, go to larrychenprints.com. I print and sign every single one of these. This is the perfect gift, or it's the perfect piece of art for your wall.